Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. How are you? How are things? How was your weekend? What'd you do? Me either. But I'm glad you're here as we embark upon a new week of whatever the heck this all is. I want to start here today. We have plenty of time to talk about the latest. Just like what's happening now, what's happening in New York, latest medical news. You're going to hear more and more terrible stories this week of hospitals full, morgues overflowing, people dying alone, death counts, death rates, military putting up field hospitals in Central Park and convention centers across the country. You're going to hear a lot of that. And it's going to get more difficult to consume the news. Did you go on a bit of a hiatus this weekend? I didn't totally stop, but I definitely had to limit my consumption over the weekend because I know we just get deluged during the week. And it's gonna get more difficult to consume the news and to hear what's going on. So I just want to take a minute here, short segment before we start, and just sort of get our heads straight. Someone sent me this the other day. It's from Seth Godin. I don't know this guy. I don't know him at all. He's author, seems to be a popular guy. He's got 700,000 Twitter followers for whatever that's worth. But I know nothing about him. He'd be like an awful person, so don't hold me accountable if you're like, oh my gosh, Seth Godin, you know everyone. I don't know, but I thought this was a good thought. The question is everything going to be okay? We've all asked or thought that, certainly sometime in the last couple of weeks, and we're going to continue to ask it moving forward. Is everything going to be okay? And he said, that depends. If we really mean to ask, is everything going to be the way it was and the way I expected it to be, then the answer is no. But the answer to that question is always no. It's always been no. We'll stop there for a second. I like that sentiment. It's something we've touched on a couple other ways in the last few weeks. So the C.S. Lewis, remember the quote from his 1947 essay about how to live in the atomic age? And his answer was, well, you live the same way that people have lived in every age. You live the same way you've always lived, now that we have an atomic bomb. And you live the same way people have always lived when there was always things that were going to kill you. Here's the quote. He says, believe me, dear sir and madam, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death. This is C.S. Lewis, before the atomic bomb was invented. It's perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances, and in which death itself was not a chance at all, but a certainty. And then, so that was like 2 weeks ago, and then last week we quoted Albert Camus, French guy. He wrote a book called The Plague, same year, 1947. He said the key is to recognize the universality of suffering. A plague is an extraordinary event, and the horror it unleashes is extraordinary too, but suffering is anything but extraordinary. Every single day you leave the house, something terrible could happen. At any moment, you could get mortally sick. And the same is true for everyone you know. All of us are hostages to forces over which we have no control. A pandemic, I read that quickly. All of us are hostages to forces over which we have no control. A pandemic simply foregrounds what's already true of our condition, just brings to the forefront what is already true and what we've been living our life not recognizing because things have been so good for so long. And this foregrounds what is and has always been true. So will everything be okay? Well, again, if you mean, will everything be the way it was and the way you expect it to be? No, definitely not. But nothing has ever been the way it was or the way you want it to be. So the change between now and last month, there's no change. So take some pressure off yourself there. So he goes on, here's what he says. He says, if we mean to say, is everything going to be the way it's going to be? Well, then the answer is yes, of course. And if we define whatever happens as okay, then yes, everything will be okay. And given that everything's going to be the way it's going to be, we're left with an actually useful and productive question instead. So instead of saying, is everything going to be okay? That's not the right question, although we've all asked it, obviously. He said, the real question is, what are you going to do about it? That's the useful and productive question. what are you going to do about it? Very stoic, I like it. You don't control what happens in life, ever, ever, ever. You don't control it, but you do control how you respond to it. Epictetus said, he said the chief task of life, the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices that I do control. He says, so where then do I look for good and evil? Not to uncontrollable externals, but within myself to the choices that are my own. There's nothing, right? So it's what you can control, what you can't. That's the big Stoic thing, right? And Christian thing too. But there's nothing you can do to stop COVID yourself. I mean, you can quarantine and you can prevent the spread, blah, 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 you can flatten the curve, all that, yeah. But there's nothing, you can't like stop it. You can't yell about it enough or stress about it enough or watch TV enough about it enough or go on Facebook or Twitter enough about it. It won't go away. You can't make it go away. Even hoarding toilet paper won't make it go away. Staying up late at night about it, waking up in the middle of the night about it, worrying about it won't make it go away. Freaking out about it won't make it go away. Actually, both freaking out about it won't make it go away and dismissing it like it's just the flu won't make it go away. Neither of those reactions. Nothing you can do about it. Stoics and Christianity is all about staying calm in moments like this and recognizing what it is you can control. You can't stop COVID unless you're a scientist coming up with a vaccine. It's probably not you. That's not me right now. So for that person, that is in their control. That's great. They can control that. So the point still remains. For me, that's not in my control. So what is? You know, Jesus never got flustered. Ever. One of the most baller stories in the Bible, Jesus and his disciples, they're out in the boat, huge storm comes, a furious squall, as it says. And Jesus was sleeping. He wasn't even just chilling, like relaxing with his feet back on a hammock. He was sleeping, right? So imagine, it was like a small boat. You fit like 20 people in these boats that they were on the Sea of Galilee. And this huge storm, like the boat's almost capsized. The guys on it are freaking out. And they frantically wake up Jesus and they say, Jesus, don't you care if we drown? Okay, so that's how serious this was. This wasn't like, I'm getting a little seasick. This is, do you care if we drown? We're gonna die here. Don't you even care? This is in Mark 4. And this was, so like reading the Bible's funny like this. You can read it so many different ways and we don't know, right? But I think when I first read this scene, and 100 times I read it, I kind of read it like this. And that is, he got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, quiet, be still. And the wind died down and it was completely calm. And he says to his disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Right, like that's how I would always read that. But I don't know if that's how he said it. I don't know if he was yelling at him or like super dramatic. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, he could say like that. Like, why are you so afraid? Or maybe if I was reading the Bible too, I read it very like, why are you so afraid? Do you, like, that's usually how it, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? Like, I read it super boring. Not like this is a real thing that happened. But now that I read it the other day, and I think it was more like this. I think it was more like he was sleeping. Right, so they woke him up and he goes, quiet, be still. And then the storm stopped. He goes, guys, why are you so afraid? Still have no faith? And he goes back to sleep. And it curls up again and falls back to sleep. Right, I imagine like that. Guys, what are you freaking out for? Still have no faith. Times like this, times of chaos. This is the time to embody everything you've ever learned. This is what we've trained for. moments like this is our time to shine. It's true for everyone. I kind of made the joke whenever we talk to an epidemiologist. I'm always like, hey, like no one's ever really, like you're at a cocktail party, you'd be like, what do you do for a living? Like, I'm an epidemiologist. And like the people fall asleep. Right? No one, like that's, most people, I don't even know what that was a couple weeks ago. And now it's like, oh, you're an epidemiologist. Like this is your moment. This is it. This is your time. But it's true for all of us. Like if you're a prepper, you're loving this. You're ready. You can prove everyone wrong. Like I've been right this whole time, see? That's physical security if you're a prepper. If you're a Christian, then you have eternal spiritual security. And you can give that to others. This is what you've been waiting for. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations, which is his diary, he said, so he's telling to himself, he says, it stares you in the face. No role is so well suited to philosophy as the one you happen to be in right now. And I know we've talked a lot about Marcus Aurelius lately because he was emperor during a plague in 168. So he's like, this is it. No role is so well suited to philosophy as the one that I'm living in right now. Now he said philosophy, if you're Christian, you can insert Christianity, you can insert Jesus. If you're not, keep philosophy, it doesn't matter. The point is, there's no need to panic. Jesus didn't panic. Jesus didn't get him going, there's a storm. What do I do? I'm afraid. He didn't do that. He's like, hey, quiet. Be still. We've never said to panic. These are times that really, really matter. And if I may present a perspective that in some ways, perhaps it's great to live in them because I think we can help people through them. Now, you can't help people through them if you're dependent on others, right? It's a little bit of the sheepdog wolf, the mentality, sheepdog wolf mentality. If you're dependent on others, then you can't be someone to help, right? Naval had a tweet yesterday. He said the World Health Organization, the WHO isn't going to warn you. The CDC is not going to test you. The FDA is not going to cure you. And FEMA isn't going to feed you. Protect yourself. Financially, get gold in your hands, in your possession. Not like a certificate that somewhere someone has gold with your name. No. In your hands, hold gold. Because we have no idea how long this will last. And we have no idea what the medium or long-term financial consequences of all this are, right? The Fed pumping $4 trillion, $2 trillion stimulus package. Like, what are we even talking about here? The stimulus package in 2009 was $787 billion. This is $2 trillion? And this is the first round. This goes on for months. What the heck is next? The Fed can't print gold. There's always so much of it, and there's not a lot of it. And I want you to have some. It's a safe haven for your retirement. That's always true. And in the moment, it's a safe haven for you, where security is I'd say, of the utmost importance right now. So American Hartford Gold Group, these are my guys. Trusted leader in gold and silver. They make it super easy to get started. It's super easy to get it, and you get it quick. Family owned. There's a lot of shady guys out there doing this, right? If you just Google the internet, don't do that. A+ rating, Better Business Bureau, Trustpilot, top ratings, like all of that. A lot of people don't even have inventory right now, right? If I may recommend, listen, when you call them, ask any question you want, but may I recommend Volcambi bars, right? They break off, they're like size of a credit card, they break off little 1 gram gold pieces for you. But there are tons of different options, and Hartford has the inventory for you. So call them now, tell them you heard about them on the first. Hartford's gonna give you a free silver coin, right? Free silver coin just to get you started. 866, numbers on the screen, 866-511-2758. Give them a call, tell them you heard about them on the first from Mike Slater. You can go online to AmericanHartfordGold.com/free coin. Might as well type in free coin, you get the free coin, right? It's only going up in value every day, so don't wait. True story, Mike Slater, spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk to one of our favorite doctors and get some insight on the latest, on some cure potential, on some testing, promising things potentially coming out here, which is all very good news. And I want to talk about masks, too. I got some people I trust and value and admire, like, oh, you got to wear masks. You shouldn't even be allowed outside without a mask. And some people are like, oh, masks don't do anything, you shouldn't wear masks. Like, how can we not agree on the masks, for the love of Pete? So we'll talk about masks coming up next as well. I want to make this point here. So some good news or bad news. I still don't know. I still go back and forth with this whole thing, right? I still go back and forth with this will be over in no time and we'll bounce back like nothing ever happened in a couple weeks. And we are totally in this for the very long haul, like many months. And some big things may never go back to the way they were, at least until a vaccine can be found, which could be years. And then who knows how much social breakdown and chaos could happen until it, right? So I'm still on both issues. I change hourly. So I have no idea, which is, by the way, is a super uncomfortable position for me to be in. I hate it. I don't like this at all. I like certainty, and this, I got none of it. But this is what I noticed. If you're looking for rock solid predictions about what's going to happen next, someone will give you that. Someone will give you that. I won't. Someone will. Someone will tell you what you want to hear. You can find that, no doubt about it. If you want to hear that this is no big deal, then you can find someone who will tell you that. And if you want someone to tell you that this is the worst thing in the world, like zombie apocalypse, then you can find someone to tell you that. And with both of those situations, you will feel satisfied. You'll feel good because, oh, this person agrees with me, I'm right, and that moment feels good. So you can feel free to search for that if you want, but I'm not going to be that guy because I don't know. And I don't like it. I don't like this state of limbo and not knowing. It's very uncomfortable for me, but I think it's real, and I'm trying to embrace it the best I can. Anyway, for whatever that's worth. I got this note on Facebook the other day. It's from Zach. He said, the scales have been knocked from my eyes. I'm woefully unprepared for a world disaster of this magnitude or something greater. And this virus is a comparative lightweight in the history of world pandemics. I've got to change that. And yesterday, talking about his level of preparedness. All that's true. And this thing is a lightweight compared to what's been and what potentially could be. So, or what is still to come in the future, many years, decades, whatever from now, right? It's weird. The good news is that this disease is not like the plague, where you get it very easily and you get symptoms right away and you die in 2 days, right? It's good news that this thing isn't the zombie apocalypse. That's good, but the bad news is that COVID is bad, but it's not so bad where all of this is obviously worth it. Make sense? I've said this to a few people and they kind of look at me funny when I say it, so I must be describing this well. I don't want this to be a plague that kills people instantly. But if it were, everyone would no doubt be taking it very seriously, without question. Make sense? But because it does nothing to 80% of people, and some people need to be hospitalized and like 1 or 2% die or something we don't even really know, and we know so little about it. So it's like some people, it's not this, some people, it's not even a big deal. So, right, because of that, it doesn't seem bad enough, and it doesn't seem worth the response. So we're weighing the economic costs, and maybe it seems overblown because we don't really know. So the good news is that it's not the plague, but in some ways the bad news is it's not that bad either, which is like a weird middle ground too. Make sense? All right, that's it. I'm grateful people like Zach and me are better prepared now for any disaster to come in the future after this one, even though this one's far from over. Jennifer wrote me, she said, I hate constantly having to check in with myself to see how I'm feeling. I miss my routine. I miss socializing. I'm just constantly frustrated and I hate it. And I'm totally with Jennifer too. I think it was like Thursday or Friday last week, I started to get, I don't know if it was like restless, like cabin fever, or just sort of over the whole thing. But I was getting over it. I was getting over it. And I really needed to readjust because we got a long way to go. It's like, so I live in San Diego. It's like if I were driving to New York and I'm in the car and I'm starting to get restless and get uncomfortable and my butt hurts and I'm like, geez, how much longer do we have to go? And I'm not even out of Vegas, right? It's like, I was like, oh, you got a long way to go, man. Like you better get right because we're not close to the end of this. And it's gonna be harder because it's gonna look, it's either gonna look like the social distancing isn't working or it's gonna work really, really well. Like we have no idea what these next couple weeks are going to bring. But the point is, I just needed a correction. I needed a mindset correction. And I want to play this clip here. This is Bill Gates on Anderson Cooper the other day. And here he's talking about how much longer he thinks this thing's going to last here.
Well, the good news is that China did their shutdown, and they did it in a very serious way. And after a 6-week period of a shutdown that's more extreme than even the best states in the United States are likely to do, they were able to start opening up again. And the total number of cases there is very, very small. So that's very good news.
Let's stop.
Models, they look at that Chinese data. They look at how the South Korean numbers.
Let's stop it. I got to cut it off right there. Okay. But before we get to Bill's main point, let's put this to bed once and for all. The communists lie. I don't know why people have such a tough time seeing this. They are our enemy. Remember, we did a special about China a couple weeks ago. It seems like forever ago. They are our enemy. They hate us. They want to take over the world, and they lie. So even with their massive crackdown, which we could never do here in America, no one would stand for it, I'm not convinced that the China cases are low. I'm not convinced they are seeing no cases. Hans Fien, he put on Twitter the other day, he said China has no new cases in the same way that their gymnasts were 16 years old. Remember the last Olympics, their gymnasts were like 8. There's this myth out there that China's back open for business. They cracked down, they did what they needed to do, they did a great job, and now it's all gone. No problems in China anymore. And then our media parrots that and says, oh, we gotta be more like China. We gotta do more like what China did. Look, their things are great. No, they're liars. They kicked all their Western media out of the country. Why would they do that? It took the Hollywood Reporter to write an article about how the Chinese Film Bureau closed all their movie theaters again. They have 70,000 movie theaters in China. They closed them all back in January. They reopened 600 of them, and now they're closing them again. These are not things that countries do when things are going swell. I'm hearing some reports now, and this we'll never know, right? But instead of the official 2,000 people dead in Wuhan, they say it could be something like 40,000 dead in Wuhan. Okay, we'll never know. That's why even with stuff like the Great Leap Forward, they're like, well, we don't really know how many people died. It's somewhere between 1 and 100 million. You get like these ridiculous results because they're liars. So stop believing anything China ever says. It's wild. Our media's knee-jerk reaction is to disagree, 180 degrees, disagree with everything that our president says, and to take without a shred of skepticism everything that China says. Okay. Let's proceed to Bill's main point here.
So we're entering into a tough period that if we do it right, we'll only have to do it once for 6 to 10 weeks. But we have to do it, it has to be the whole country. We have to raise the level of testing and the prioritization of that testing quite dramatically in order to make sure we go through one shutdown so that we take the medical problem and really stop it before there's a large number of deaths. We do then get an economic problem, which is why you want to minimize the amount of time, and having states go at different things or thinking you can do it county by county, that will not work. The cases will be exponentially growing anywhere you don't have a serious shutdown.
I first heard that clip when I happened to be in a moment, a headspace where I was thinking this would be done in a few weeks. And then I heard that and that thing slapped me across the face. 6 to 10 weeks? If we do it right, which we can't completely, right? Let me make this point first, too. First few weeks of this whole thing, I was making the argument that I was talking about America as a single unit, right? Like America is 10 days behind Italy, right? But then it became clear that it's more like maybe New York City's 10 days behind Italy, and California maybe a couple days behind New York City, and then Louisiana maybe a couple days, right? And like there's all these different parts of the country are in different places of this. So I was thinking, geez, can you really talk about the country as a single unit? Because different states and different cities are going to peak and fall at the same time. So maybe instead of thinking of America as a single unit, we think of America as 50 states, or different, maybe even like a dozen regions. And then we can maybe open up different areas or cities or states or regions at different times, depending on where they fall. That was kind of my thinking for a while. And then Bill Gates just put the kibosh on that. And I think he's right, unfortunately. Because if you lock down, let's say you just lock down California, New York, right? California, New York, you guys are the trouble spots, you guys lock down. And you say, hey, great news, Oklahoma. You're open for business because you only have 100 cases. So you're open now as you were. Okay, well then, same thing. Like Oklahoma is 100 cases turns into 1,000 cases, turns into 10,000, right? Just same exponential curve. So you can't do that. You can't say, let's just take care of the problem in New York, but and then we'll let the rest of the country do, because now you're gonna have another problem everywhere else in Oklahoma and everywhere, right? And then you get people from New York traveling between. Like, I don't think you can think of the country in the 50 different states. I think you almost got to think about it in this case, as Bill Gates did, in one giant unit. It has to be all in. All in, the whole country, all in or nothing. And then, if I may, Mexico, no one has any idea what's going on with Mexico. I live in San Diego, so Mexico's like down the street. It's like 20 miles from where I'm sitting right now. And Mexico, it's our busiest border crossing in the world, is San Diego and Tijuana. So what the heck happens when this thing sweeps through Tijuana? So, anyway, that's the first point of it. Weeks. So again, as I said, you can find someone who says this is gonna be over next week and that'll make you feel good. You can find someone who's gonna say this is gonna have to take a year and that'll make you maybe feel good because they agree with you. But I'm just telling you, Bill Gates is a pretty influential guy. And he's talking 6 to 10 weeks. 10 weeks puts us in June. The president's suggestion, that we may be, just said the other day, that we may be open in end of April. But he's always gonna be on the super rosy side, right? His suggestions are always going to be super ambitious, and we have to weigh that and understand that it's going to be longer than the president says. No one's happy. Like when I say when I shared Bill Gates' clip there, it's going to be 6 to 10 weeks of this. Like no one feels good about that. No one's like, wow, Mike Slater show really made me feel great today. No one's saying that. So I hate talking about that, but I think it's important because in 10 weeks, or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, when everyone else is restless out of their minds, you will, and I will at least be mentally prepared for that. And we'll have more peace in the midst of it, right? If you think this thing's gonna be over next week, then 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks go by, you're gonna be very upset and frustrated and angry and all sorts of bad emotions that lead to you making bad decisions. But if you accept now that this may go on for months, you're gonna be more emotionally prepared when those months come. And then if it ends sooner than that, that's great, all the better. And I'm not even sure 10 weeks is the end of this, because I don't know what happens after 10 weeks. If I could talk to Bill Gates, let's get him on the horn. Can we get Erica, get Bill Gates on the phone right now. What are you gonna do after 10 weeks, then what? Without a vaccine. And as I know how devastating this is for the economy, I'm not even saying I support this. I'm not saying we need to do this for 6 to 10 weeks. I don't know. I'm just saying that Bill Gates is a pretty influential guy, and if he says 10 weeks, then politicians are gonna listen to him, and they're gonna force you to do this for 10 weeks. It doesn't matter what I think is best or whatever. I'm just telling you to be ready for that. It's definitely coming. Coming up next, I want to talk to one of our good friends, Dr. Victory. It's an awesome name. We're gonna talk about masks. We'll talk about cures, potential promising things. We'll talk about vaccines and any latest medical thing that we know next with the doctor. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word. Slater Crusaders, I want to go to one of my favorite guests, one of our go-to sources of information here, and I got a ton of questions, so let's do it. It's Dr. Kelly Victory, also one of the best names ever. She's a trauma and emergency specialist and expert in mass casualties and disaster preparedness, which is like this is it. Here we are. Dr. Kelly, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Let's start with masks. I hear some people who I trust and admire and value say you shouldn't be allowed to leave the house without a mask. And I hear some people say masks are stupid and wasteful and definitely don't do it. It won't stop you from getting it or from transmitting it. I have no idea what to think. Settle this once and for all.
Well, it's a great question. In my opinion, masks are the mainstay of what we call PPE, personal protective equipment. I believe right now that the people who are naysayers, who are saying don't use or wear a mask, are really trying to protect the stockpile of equipment that we have for the people who need it most. In other words, if everybody who's going to the gas station or the grocery store puts a mask on, clearly those masks are not available for the people on the front lines who are seeing patients, who are trying to respond to people who are who are ill, and therefore it's a supply issue. There's no question that masks improperly worn can be more of a problem. If you're putting the mask on and you're touching your face all over to do it, and then you take it and hang it off your ear when you go to talk on your telephone, and then you re-put the mask back on, you may have actually contaminated your face in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise. And I see a lot of that. I just flew in yesterday, I flew out of Denver and into Southern California, and I saw half the people in the airport, which is about 5 people, wearing masks in different, versions of them hanging, as I said, over one ear. I saw a couple people with it just over their mouth and not over their nose. So I think there are a couple things at play here. Number one is the improper use of masks that can actually make them more problematic because you end up touching your face and spreading potentially a virus or bacteria, and the fact that we are impacting stockpile. If there weren't an issue of supply, if we had, miraculously from above got, hundreds of millions of masks delivered to Earth, I don't think you would hear so many people saying, quote, don't wear a mask. Because in general, I think they can't be helpful.
Is it worth wearing something over your face when you go to the grocery store once a week?
I really wouldn't recommend doing that, Mike. I think the best thing people can do when they're in those sorts of situations is do the best they can to socially distance, to physically distance, stay away from other people who may be coughing or sneezing. I worry about this idea that just sort of wrapping a bandana around your mouth, could it potentially stop a water droplet from landing on your mouth or for you breathing it in? It could, but it's really not the best way to train people on public health. So I wouldn't recommend that you wrap, a sports sock around your face.
Yeah, let's talk about some promising news potentially in the cure department or the treatment department here. What have you heard? Because I've been reading these very big words lately that I can't pronounce. So what do we know about this?
Well, I think there are some very hopeful things on the horizon, and they're more than on the horizon. They're actually being implemented in a number of places. The WHO happens to be conducting now a large-scale study on 4 different drugs. The 4 things that we're looking at primarily are chloroquine, which is a drug that's been used for decades, since 1950, primarily for malaria. Hydroxychloroquine, which is kind of a cousin of chloroquine, used also for prevention of malaria, as well as very commonly for rheumatoid arthritis in this country and for an autoimmune disease called lupus. Then 2 other drugs, remdesivir, which is a antiviral that was used with some luck in treating Ebola. So there's some reason to believe that it may be helpful here and has shown a little bit of promise. And then 2 antiviral drugs that have been used successfully to treat HIV. In a combination, they're called Kaletra. Those drugs haven't, interestingly, shown much promise in the very early stages of this. I think the 2 that we're going to focus on primarily are chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine in particular, because it is a very safe drug. Are there some potential side effects? Absolutely. If you read the back of the bottle of Tylenol, you'd never take a Tylenol because all of these drugs have some potentially bad side effects. But hydroxychloroquine in general has a very good safety profile, meaning people take it for years for rheumatoid arthritis with no problem. And in this case, we'd be talking about treating people for a number of days, 5, 6, maybe 8 days. We're just trying to figure out what would be the right protocol. And then,
if I may, sorry. I wanted maybe another day or when things slow down, I'd love to just get to the science of what it is and why it works and all that stuff. But let me answer this question because I've seen on Twitter all these things where X number of patients, it was given to X number of patients and there was this many people who lived, a few people died. That's a great success, they say. But I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I don't know what all that means. What should I be looking for when I see these very anecdotal success stories? How should I be thinking when I read about that?
Well, it's a great question, but really, this is the basis of fantastic science. This is how, when I believe physicians are at their best, when we've got people all over the country, all over the world in this case, who are saying, look, there's no big downside to this. These drugs have good safety profiles. We have reason to believe, because this isn't novel. We actually used chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine back during SARS and during the Middle Eastern respiratory outbreak, both of which were coronaviruses. So there's some reason to think that this could work. And when you have people all over saying, I'm going to try this protocol, this is what makes sense, we've seen, and then you combine all of those different stories, some of them anecdotal, but some larger cases. I have a number of physician friends who are saying, look, I've treated 60 people so far, and I didn't have one person need to be hospitalized. Or I had, X number of people who were in the hospital getting ready to move to the ICU, and not one of them needed to eventually go to the ICU. Then we will start to distill those and combine them into a mass of information, a mass of data that helps us to make informed decisions. And again, you have to remember, this is not as if we haven't, these aren't untested drugs. They aren't drugs that we're saying they haven't been FDA approved. These are drugs that have been used for decades and are been approved for other indications. So they're being used, Mike, off-label. It's what we call using them off-label, or for an indication for which they haven't been fully studied at this point.
Okay. I got tons more questions. I got about 1 minute. Let's talk about, I don't know if you got a hold of this yet, but I read this thing about serology and testing. Does that mean it's testing somebody's immunity once they already have it? So I'll throw you a two-part question in, and you got a minute. Testing, what's your timeline for when you think we can actually get some pretty reliable, widespread testing? And then also testing for immunity and how long someone has immunity. When are we going to start to know these things a little better?
Great questions. So when we talk about testing, right now the testing we're doing is just for what we call the antigen. Do you have the virus right now? The virus is the antigen. So they're using the nasal swabs, and they're coming up with some different saliva tests to see, do you have the virus? Are you currently infected? What we want to do too is be able to test for the antibodies, the serology. Were you infected or exposed before and have now developed immunity? So the test the study that you sent me, or the story you sent me, was about one of a number of companies, private sector companies, that are coming up with a combination, one that tests for, do you have the antigen currently? Are you currently infected? Or were you exposed and have gotten over it and have actually developed immunity? And they're testing those together. And there are
that's important too, because I may not have it, but maybe I had it a month ago. And if I test positive or for the immunity of it, then I can maybe go back to work too, whether I have it or not.
It's important information, because if you knew that you had already been exposed, were over it, and had antibodies, then good on you. Get out there and get this country running again. On the other hand, if you knew you're in a high risk category and didn't have any antibodies, then you're one of the people who needs to really be careful, remain isolated.
Interesting. It seems like that test may be almost, I don't say more important, but equally important as the initial, like, do you have it test? Okay, very good.
And that's going to come private sector. There are a number of companies working on it.
Dr. Victory, it's my fault that I only allotted 8 minutes. That's all. I yabbered on too much today. Next time you come on, if you'll allow it, I will. We should do 2 segments, because you have way too much information, and I apologize for having you force it into such a short time.
Great. We'll do it again soon.
We'll do more next time. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Kelly Victory on Twitter. Dr. Kelly Victory on Twitter. All right. Wrap up coming up. True story. Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, want to wrap up the show today. I want to talk about leadership. This is the type of segment I wanted the other day when we talked with Chris Whipple that we did not get an aborted mission. Alas, we'll do it now. First, start off with what not to do. So I want to play 2 clips here from Congresswomen debating that bill that passed. I really don't even want to play this. Let's play a little bit of AOC. Just you've already seen it, but just like 10 seconds of AOC. That's all I can take.
Mr. Speaker, I now have the privilege of yielding to the gentlelady from Queens, one of the epicenters of this challenge to our country, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to our Majority Leader. I represent one of the hardest hit communities in the hardest hit city in this country, Queens, New York. 13 dead in a night in Elmhurst Hospital alone. Our community's reality is this country's future if we don't do anything. Hospital workers do not have protective equipment. We don't have the necessary ventilators, but we have to go into this vote eyes wide open. What did the Senate majority fight for? One of the largest corporate bailouts with as few strings as possible in American history.
All right.
Shame.
All right, that's all I get. That's all I get, right? The knee bends is the thing. It's like, all right. When you only have one note, as she does, then everything is the same tone all the time, no matter what is going on. That's all she can do. It's her one note. Now, she's already in the squad. She's the leader of the squad. But they always have ongoing tryouts. This is Haley Stevens. She's 36.
Listen to the scientists and the doctors who have spent a lifetime in this space. Listen to Dr. Fauci. This is not a moment to provide the false comforts of times past. We are so proud of Americans who are sacrificing so much right now. Our students gone from their beloved classrooms and classmates. We beam for our manufacturers who have no... I request 30 more seconds because I rise before you adorning these
gentleman
latex
from Maryland
gloves
is recognized.
Not for personal attention, but to encourage you to take
Gentlemen,
this disease seriously.
gentlelady will
I rise
suspend.
for every American
I'm gonna
who
give
is
you more
scared right
time.
now. To the families.
The gentlelady will suspend. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized. The gentlelady is out of order.
I yield the gentlelady 30 additional seconds.
The gentlewoman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
Cause of their servitude, sharing in the profession with those who have not come before you. Similar times of trying medical need, wars and flus past. You will see darkness, you will be pushed, and our society needs you. To stand together at this time, our country loves you. To our doctors and our nurses, I wear these latex
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland is reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized. The gentleman from Texas is now recognized. The gentlelady from Michigan is out of order.
Lady, they were going to give you more time. If you just, I feel like Jesse Kelly should take this bit right here. I feel like we should phone in Jesse Kelly for like a minute and have him make some misogynist joke. I'll leave it to him. But they were on your side. He was about to say, I give you 30 more seconds. Jesse would say, if you just shut your yap for a minute. That's what I was trying to avoid saying. If you just shut your yap for 10 seconds, then you'd get another 30 seconds. You could spare us the theatrics. Here's why I bring that up. First of all, I also it was all written out, right? It's one thing if the spirit moves you and you're giving this big passionate speech, but you wrote it all out. What a phony baloney thing that was. I share those things not to make fun of it, because whatever, that's boring. That's all boring. I'm over the act. I'm over it. Maybe in normal times we could make a big deal about that, right? But I'm not gonna do that here. I wanna talk about leadership instead, because that's not what that was. We've been talking about, we kicked off the show talking about what you can control, what you can't, and recognizing the difference. Anxiety is focusing on what you can't control, right? If you focus on what you can't control, then you will get anxious. I came across this the other day, and I think this is right. It's Alexander Cortez. He says, if you want to not be overwhelmed, you must cultivate your own, oh, that's the second tweet, sorry. He says, I remember when 2017 started and people hoped for a less crazy year. And then 2018 started, and people hoped it would be calmer than 2017. And then 2019, and on and on. The truth is the world is dynamically changing and accelerating faster than ever before. It's not going to slow down. If you want to not be overwhelmed, You must cultivate your own sphere of stability and live decisively with firm boundaries. Trusting anything to status quo and mainstream is going to be a grave mistake. Be smarter than that. I just love this idea of cultivating your own sphere of stability in the midst of all this craziness that's going on, because it's only going to get crazier. It's not slowing down. It's going to get faster. And people think, like AOC and whoever that was, the congressman from Michigan, they think that times like this require talking like this and leading like this and being angry and yelling all the time. It's the opposite. Times like this require wisdom and sober judgment and action. Right? You can act like that in times of peace when you're trying to get attention. Right? I get that. I don't even blame him for doing that if you're trying to get attention, because everyone's very distracted when things are good. But then there's times for when you need focus. You don't need yelling and bang, right? This is Marcus Aurelius. He wrote this in his diary. I'm going to quote a lot of Marcus Aurelius moving forward. He said mantras for yourself. He said epithets, but I like the word mantra. Mantras for yourself. Upright, modest, straightforward, sane, cooperative, disinterested. Maintain your claim to these mantras without caring if others apply them to you or not. Set sail then with this handful of mantras to guide you, and steer a steady course if you can, like an emigrant to the islands of the blessed. Right? You don't see, but these upright, modest, straightforward, sane, cooperative, disinterested. You don't see Trump and Pence going crazy like that, do you? You see Dr. Fauci getting up there and screaming and yelling? But yet they're the ones who get criticized. And the squad, they're passionate. Come on. There's a great book called The Captain Class by Sam Walker. It's about all the unsung heroes who led their teams to championships. And what's crazy about this, what he discovered is that the captains of these teams, these championship-winning teams, they're not the all-stars. They're not the highest-paid players. They're not the most famous players. They're not the players who sell the most jerseys. They're quiet, unsung heroes in the backgrounds, but these are the real leaders. And there's a couple different characteristics of these leaders. Focus, extreme focus and competition. A willingness to do thankless jobs in the shadows. A low-key communication style. Motivates others with passionate, nonverbal displays. Not screaming and yelling, but nonverbal displays. Strong convictions and courage to stand apart, and ironclad emotional control. Did you see that out of those two congresswomen? Of course not. So I'm not going to point to them anymore. You get that. What do we need out of a leader? A leader, especially in times like this, is focused, selfless, clear, inspiring by their actions, courageous, and emotionally controlled. There's a mantra in the military. I think it's the SEALs. I'm not sure, but calm is contagious. I like that a lot. Calm is contagious. And I'll wrap up with this, another Marcus Aurelius. He says, keep this thought handy when you feel a fit of rage coming on. It isn't manly to be enraged, right? So it's a very worldly idea that if you're a man, you got to get angry and you yell, and like a man is big and strong. It's not manly to be enraged. Rather, gentleness and civility are more human and therefore manly, or human as opposed to like the animals. A real man doesn't give way to anger and discontent, and such a person has strength, courage, and endurance, unlike the angry and complaining. The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. How good is that? The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. We need that in our home, always, but I mean, from national leaders too, but good thing no one looks to congressmen as leaders anymore, right? No one does. Do you? Geez, I hope not. I don't think you do. But people are looking for leadership from you. Your family is, your friends are, your neighbors are. We have a knee-jerk reaction to look to the president for leadership. Right? And that's good, I get it. But you're the leader of the people who look to you first. So let's stay informed, curate where you get your information from. Highly recommend it being the first. Stay informed, stay focused, stay under control, keep proper perspective best we can, and we will get through it together. True story. Mike Slater. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Spread the word.